sometimes cheat at math. The other truth is that B is family to me. She just is. So if you're reading this and thinking that she sounds mean or rude, I hope you'll remember that no matter what, she's my person. But irregardless, and to get back to this book I'm writing and which you are maybe reading now, B was wrong that day in my room. It wasn't the same difference. Not really. 13 isn't 12, and today isn't yesterday. Sometimes important things happen and everything changes so slowly you don't notice, or so quickly you nearly miss it. Or you change in ways you never expected. Guess that's what happened to me last year. I grew, whether I wanted to or not. And what B doesn't get is that I don't care so much if other people believe my story. That's not why I'm writing this all down. I'm writing it because I'll read this book. I know I will, over and over for the rest of my life, trying to figure out what happened, trying to understand it all better. Look, I know that as time goes by, I'll forget the details. I've forgotten so much already. But I'm hoping I can hold on to the parts I still remember, the ones that haven't slipped away. Because someday I'll turn into a grown-up. Someday I'll have a job and a car and a dishwasher, and if I'm not careful, I'll wake up one morning and I'll be too old to remember what happened the year I turned 13. So I'm writing this book. Starting today. I definitely am writing this book, no matter how it turns out, even if it ends up being a total failure. And if you're reading it somewhere in the future, whoever you are, I hope you'll like it and believe my story. That would be nice. But if you don't, that's okay too. I know now that people are going to believe what they want. And what happened is pretty wild. I almost couldn't believe it myself. As a matter of fact, that was sort of where everything began, I guess. With me not believing. 1. How it actually started. Okay, I don't want to sound obnoxious, but wasn't that good? Didn't that sound like something from a real book? All that stuff about that was sort of where everything began, with me not believing. I hope so. I revised it over and over. I worked really hard. Anyway, I guess where everything truly began was in the kitchen of my house. And when it began was one awful day last August when I was still 12. That day, I was sitting there after school, eating a bowl of rice pudding at the kitchen island and worrying about the fall fling, because walking home from school that day along Woodland, B hadn't been able to talk about anything else. We'd started 7th grade a few weeks earlier, and that morning over the intercom, they'd announced the big fall dance. I'd barely registered the announcement myself, but the entire way home, as we'd walked past the overgrown yards and honeysuckle-covered fences and colorful old bungalows of Woodland Avenue, B had gone on and on about the red mini dress she wanted to buy for the dance, and about how she was hoping her mom was going to let her wear actual makeup as opposed to just boring lip gloss. We trudged along, sweating in the heat. August in Atlanta is pretty unbearable, and the whole conversation made me as uncomfortable as the weather. Then, B stopped walking for a minute in the shade of a huge weeping willow that hung out over the street and said, "The main thing, Zippy, is that you don't want to overdo it, because that's the kiss of death in middle school. You know what I mean?" I absolutely didn't know. Kiss of death? I asked, staring out through the willow branches that B and I had swung on only a few years earlier. "What are you talking about? Overdo what?" "It," B said as she parted the branches, stepped through them, and began walking again. "You know, like the dance, the dress, the whole deal, everything. Now that we're in 7th grade, you want to keep it cool." "But," I said, "how would I overdo it? How would I keep it cool? I don't even understand what any of that means." I glanced down at my black leggings and matching t-shirt, the long wavy hair that fell to my waist, feeling bewildered and not remotely cool. B laughed. Then she said, "Hey, I have an idea. What if we went to the dance with Lane and Tess